You know, esports has some of the highest highs and the lowest lows, but when it comes to the lows, some teams are just bad. They lose because they're worse than other teams, and it's kind of simple, you know, it's straightforward. But then there are cursed teams. These are teams that should win. On paper, they're better, they have the talent, they have the results leading up to the big moment, and somehow they don't, over and over again. Some may describe these as curses, and today I want to look at 3 different kinds of curses in esports. The chokers, you know, the teams that dominate until the moments that matter the most, the hype cursed teams, the teams that everyone expected to conquer the world and implode before they even get the chance, and the curse of winning. What happens when you finally achieve the impossible and then watch it fall apart anyways. Today we're going to look at 3 games that exemplify these 3 curses, so let's get into it. Perhaps one of the best examples of curses in esports is Gen.G's choking curse. And to understand this, you need to understand one player, Chovy. Now, Chovy is widely considered one of the greatest mid laners to ever play League of Legends. He's been considered a top tier player since 2018, and he won multiple LCK championships. He's consistently ranked as one of the best, either the best or second best, because of course Faker's always there, but mid laners in the entire world. And for years, he couldn't make it past quarterfinals at Worlds. But let's back up, because the curse isn't just about Chovy. It's about the entire organization that seems allergic to winning Worlds. Gen.G's history goes back to Samsung Galaxy, the Korean org that won Worlds in 2014 and again in 2017. Now, Samsung White in 2014 was genuinely dominant, dropping only 1 game in the entire tournament. And then Samsung Galaxy in 2017 even reverse swept SKT in the finals. Then Samsung sold the team. KSV Esports bought them, rebranded them as Gen.G, and the curse had officially begun. Now, in 2018, Gen.G would go to Worlds as defending champions. They would then get knocked out in groups with a 1-5 record. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was a crazy upset. And then in 2019, they didn't even qualify for Worlds. In 2020, they made it to quarterfinals and lost to G2. 2021, it was semifinals, and they lost to Edward Gaming, who would then go on to win the entire thing. But 2022 would be different. I mean, this was the year. Gen.G assembled what looked like a super team. They signed Chovy. They brought in Ruler, Peanut, Doran, Lehans. They dominated the LCK Summer Split, winning the championship without dropping a single game in the finals against T1. They go 3-0 against the best team in Korea. They go to Worlds, and they even make it to semifinals, where they would lose 1-3 to DRX. DRX goes on to win the whole thing. You see, this was becoming a pattern, right? The team that beats Gen.G keeps winning the tournament. Gen.G keeps being the final boss before the final boss. In 2023, Gen.G would win Spring, win Summer, go to Worlds as Korea's first seed, and they would cruise through Swiss Stage 3-0. The brackets look favorable. Their ADC pays literally said luck is on our side. And then they would go to the quarterfinals against Bilibili Gaming and once again be upset in a 2-3 defeat. Now, Pays' comment aged poorly, and the community memed it to oblivion. I mean, it was brutal. I mean, we were told that Chovy was finally gonna do it this year. This was finally his year, and it was just another choke. And at this point, Chovy was becoming known as Choky, which is like, it's kind of funny, but it's so rude. I definitely had to feel bad for the guy, but he kept living up to the name. You see, in 2024, Gen.G goes even harder. They signed Keen, one of the best top laners in the world, and they bring in Canyon, a former world champion. They decided to keep Chovy as well. I mean, this was a star-studded roster, some of the best players in professional League of Legends history. They easily won MSI, and they won the Esports World Cup, and went on a 27 series win streak, the longest in LCK history. They are statistically one of the most dominant teams in League of Legends history going into Worlds 2024. It was the semifinals in Worlds. The team Gen.G had beaten 10 consecutive times that year was going to play against them, T1. T1 won 3-1 against Gen.G and went on to win Worlds again. And here's where it gets almost poetic. In 2025, Gen.G brought back Ruler, the ADC from their 2017 World Championship roster. The guy who was there when they actually won it all. They dominate again. MSI champions again. Another 27 series win streak. And then they made it all the way to semifinals at Worlds 2025, where they would go on to lose to KT Rolster, led by BDD, the mid laner who used to be on Gen.G before they replaced him with Chovy. The curse passes from player to player. Chovy couldn't break it, Ruler coming back couldn't break it. The best roster on paper year after year after year just could not win Worlds. Domestically, Gen.G was a dynasty. I mean, they had 4 consecutive LCK titles, MSI champions. They beat everyone when it doesn't matter the most. But at Worlds, they were the gatekeepers. Beat Gen.G and you're probably going to win the whole thing. But Gen.G themselves, they were stuck. Forever the bridesmaid. Chovy had made Worlds every single year since 2019. He made the playoffs every single time and was never able to win it. The best player in the world by many metrics has never held the Summoners Cup. At that point, it just has to be a curse. And so we have to crown Gen.G with the choking curse. Before the Overwatch League, there was Team Envious, and in 2016 and 2017, Envious was the Western Overwatch team. I mean, they won Apex Season 1 in Korea, the most prestigious tournament in the world at the time, and played against Korean teams on their home turf. Their roster was the team to beat. Now, they placed in the top 8 in Apex Season 2 and 3. They were battle-tested. They had proven they could compete with the best in the world. When Blizzard announced the Overwatch League, Envious became the Dallas Fuel, and the hype was unreal. They signed the majority of that championship Envious squad, and they added Seagull, one of the most popular streamers in Overwatch history. They added Effect, an incredible Tracer player, and they added XQC, already controversial but undeniably talented as a tank player. The Dallas Fuel were favorites, not a favorite, the favorite at least, in the West. They were supposed to compete for championships immediately, and then the season started, and they went 0-4. In Stage 1, Dallas finished 3-7. Their wins came against the lowly Shock and the soon-to-be 0-40 Shanghai Dragons. XQC got suspended by the league for disparaging, emoting, and making comments about casters on stream and players, and the Fuel extended its suspension to cover the entire stage. But then Stage 2 started promising. They went 2-0 to start, and then XQC got suspended again, and this time the Fuel cut him entirely. They didn't want to deal with it anymore, and then between stages, Custa and Rascal both left, and the drama was constant. The team finished Stage 2 at 2-8. Stage 3 was more of the same, 1-9, their only win against the Shanghai Dragons again. But here's the thing, Stage 4 something clicked. The Fuel rallied for their best stage yet, going 6-4, and then sneaking into Stage 4 playoffs as the 4th seed. They lost to NYXL in the semifinals, but they ended their inaugural season on a high note, and their final record was 12-28. Far from impressive, but at least they were on an upward trajectory. Over half their wins came in Stage 4 alone, and it was certainly not the start that the franchise was hoping for. And then there was Effect. Effect was their star Tracer player. He was grinding himself into the ground. He was known for practicing obsessively, streaming until the early hours of the morning, holding himself to impossible standards, and the losing was destroying him. He took a leave of absence to return to Korea to recover from burnout, and he came back, then left again. He was open about his mental health struggles, about the severe anxiety that came from losing over and over again when he was trying so hard. The Dallas Fuel started to become a cautionary tale about mental health in esports, and the cycle of misery continued in 2019, which brought the Ghost meta, which was 3 tanks and 3 supports and no DPS. I mean, the Fuel were fine at it. They weren't exceptional. They went 4-3 in Stage 1, just barely missing playoffs by 1 seed, and then in Stage 2 they rallied to 5-2 and made playoffs but got swept by Vancouver. The meta then changed to Sombra and Ball, and the Dallas Fuel fell to 1-6. Stage 4 brought Rollock, and somehow they got even worse. 0-7, tied for the worst in the league. Their final 2019 record was 10-18, and at this point fans were saying just tank the season, it's over. But 2020 was more mediocrity. 9-12 record, and they were swept in the playoffs by the Washington Justice. And for 3 years, the Dallas Fuel were a below average, sometimes terrible team. The cycle of misery was in full swing, and then they actually fixed it. In 2021, new coach Rush built a whole new roster around Element Mystic players, Fearless, Sparkle, Hanbin, and Fielder. And they won the May Melee, the first stage win in franchise history. They made it to 3rd place at the end of the season, losing to the Atlanta Reign in the lower bracket finals, which would go on to 2022, where they went 20-4 in the regular season. Hanbin became the best Junker Queen in the world, and in a 7-map grand finals against San Francisco Shock, one of the best matches in Overwatch history, Edison took over on Colosseo, and the Dallas Fuel finally did it. After 5 long years, multiple terrible seasons, player changing years in and out, they won the 2020 Overwatch League finals. The cycle of misery was broken, but here's why they still belong in this video. Those first 3 years were the curse. The Dallas Fuel were supposed to dominate in season 1. They never showed up. The envious dynasty died the moment it became the Dallas Fuel. The original roster scattered, Siegel and Effect retired, the old guard left one by one, and the team that eventually won the championship had almost nothing to do with the team that was supposed to win it. This curse is more about a hype that dies. It isn't about never winning, it's about a version of the team that should have won, never getting the chance. The Dallas Fuel won eventually, but it was a completely different team built from scratch years later. This was the curse of hype and expectations that just because you should win doesn't mean that you will. What if winning was the worst thing that ever happened to you? January 28th, 2018, Boston, Massachusetts. The E-League Major Grand Finals. It was Cloud9 versus FaZe Clan. FaZe Clan was the super team. They had Nico, Guardian, Olafmeister, Kerrigan, Rain, 5 of the best players in the world. They had a perfect 8-0 map record against Cloud9 in 2017. They were supposed to win. Cloud9 was the underdog. They had Stewie 2K, Taric, Automatic, Rush, and Skadoodle. A scrappy NA roster running a puggy style that wouldn't work or shouldn't work against elite teams. They started the Legend stage 0-2. They had to win 3 elimination matches in a row just to make playoffs. They were the only team to qualify after dropping their first 2 maps. They weren't supposed to be here. It was quarterfinals, and Cloud9 swept G2 Esports, a team many considered potential tournament winners. They moved on to the semifinals where they beat SK Gaming, a 2-time major winning Brazilian powerhouse. Cloud9 was the second North American team in history to make a major grand final. They would go head to head against the super team of FaZe. FaZe would take Mirage 16-14, and Cloud9 then answered back, dominating Overpass 16-10. It was map 3 Infernal. FaZe gets to match point 15-11, 4 rounds away from winning the major. The script was clear. FaZe would step over the Cinderella roster and claim their trophy. And then Stewie TK happened. It was round 29, his solo B-side hold, a 3K to keep Cloud9 alive. Round 30, another massive play. Cloud9 forces overtime. First overtime, Cloud9 goes up 18-15. It was match point. Guardian clutched a 1v2 to keep FaZe alive and go to second overtime. 97 rounds of Counter-Strike. Over 1 million viewers watching. Double overtime, 22-19, and Cloud9 had done it. Cloud9 had won. North America wins their first, and to this day only, major championship in CSGO history. Skadoodle won MVP. The impossible had happened. It was one of the most incredible storylines we ever had. They toppled superstar teams, battled through mountains of adversity, and somehow still prevailed. And then 2 months later, Stewie 2K would leave. Now, that's the curse. The greatest moment in North American Counter-Strike history, and it immediately started falling apart. In an interview, Stewie said Skadoodle was demotivated and burnt out after Boston. He'd achieved everything he wanted. The grind didn't feel the same anymore. He'd finally won a major after years of being considered one of the best oppers to never win anything. And now what? Well, March 30th, 2018, barely 2 months after Boston, Stewie 2K announced that he was joining SK Gaming. The guy who made the play in the moment was gone. Cloud9 owner Jack would later say Stewie abandoned him. And Stewie disputed that. He's saying, come on, Jack, we both know abandonment is not the right term. Whatever the truth, the roster was broken, which is a little bit strange considering they had just won, but okay. They tried to replace him with FNS, an experienced in-game leader. It didn't work. FNS was benched after a few months, and Skadoodle took a leave of absence. He came back briefly, then retired at the end of the year. He knew his victory at Boston was among the biggest achievements he could wish for in Counter-Strike. His decision to retire was the natural thing to do. In July, Taric left too. He followed Stewie to MIBR, the major MVP gone. 2 months later, after winning the major, the roster was crumbling. 6 months after, only 3 players remained, and by the end of 2018, Cloud9 had become a predominantly European roster. Golden and Flusha from Fnatic, Kiyoshima from FaZe, the all-American dream team that had won Boston was gone, and Cloud9 never recovered. They didn't win a single tournament after the major, not one. The results were consistently bad. At IEM Katowice 2019, they barely made it through the qualifier, then went 1-3 in the Legend stage, and at Starladder Berlin, they finished dead last in the minor qualifier. They didn't even make it to the tournament. Their roster kept churning. Golden, Flusha, and more. A full roster change kicked off 2020 with a ATK acquisition that didn't work either, and then COVID hit and North American CS collapsed. Cloud9 tried one more time, the Colossus project they called it. They hired caster Henry G as a general manager, built a European roster, tried to compete from across the Atlantic, and 6 months later, they pulled the plug. In March 2021, Cloud9 brought their Counter-Strike operations to an indefinite halt, and the organization that won NA's only major shut down their CS division entirely. Their players scattered, Stewie bounced from MIBR to Liquid to EG, never recapturing that magic. Tarek retired and became one of the best streamers on Twitch. His Valorant co-streams get hundreds of thousands of viewers. Skadoodle went to Valorant, Automatic went to Valorant, came back to CS, and then Rush faded into tier 2. Here's what makes this curse different from the others. Gen.G and Dallas struggled to get their wins. Cloud9 won. They achieved the ultimate goal, and it destroyed them. There's a theory that the Boston Major was always going to be a one-time thing. Tarek's pug-style calling wasn't sustainable, and Skadoodle was already inconsistent. The team had a ceiling, and they had happened to hit it at the perfect moment, but we'll never know because they didn't try to find out. Stewie left before they could even defend their title, and the question of what if Stewie 2K stayed? What if they could have secured an upgrade on Skadoodle? These questions can never be answered, but the core of Tarek, Stewie 2K, and Automatic was fun while it lasted, and nobody can take NA's first major away from them. Sometimes the curse isn't about failing to win, sometimes it's about winning once perfectly and then watching everything fall apart anyway. Cloud9 won the only major that mattered to NA fans, and that was the last thing they ever did together. 3 teams, 3 curses. Gen.G keeps building the best roster in the world and keeps losing in semifinals. Dallas Fuel had everything going for them and watched it all fall apart before the seasons really started. Cloud9 won the only thing that mattered and then immediately disintegrated. What makes a curse different from just being bad? I mean, it's the expectation. It should have been. Gen.G should win Worlds. Dallas should have dominated their first season. Cloud9 should have been the start of an NA dynasty. But esports don't care about should. The game happens in the moment, and after those moments, something goes wrong. Gen.G keeps falling short. Dallas implodes. Cloud9 wins and then has nothing left. But maybe that's the coolest curse of it all. Gen.G and Dallas can still dream about what could be. Cloud9 got exactly what they wanted, and it still ended in heartbreak. The roster scattered and the magic disappeared. All that's left is a highlight reel and a what if. Some curses are never about reaching the top, and some curses are about reaching it and realizing that it was the end, not the beginning. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what team do you think is the most cursed in esports. Maybe there's a part 2 in here somewhere. Thanks for watching.